And I'm sure you have plenty, Craig, but can you maybe share like a couple of memorable stories from your time on the Hawk? It can be in the air or on the ground, whatever you think would be stand out.
Okay, so one of them would be so when I left the Navy, I went on to become a commercial pilot, but I also was a reserve pilot. So I was a reservist in the Navy, and I would come back and fly the Hawk as a reservist. So that was quite a cherished position. And there were lots of other people who were doing the same thing, or left the Navy and became airline pilots. And so I remember one day we went to Yeovilton, and the detail was 1v1. Again, this would be an example of so the other aircraft, I think there were two Harrier guys, and then the aircraft I was in was a Harrier guy in the front, and I was in the rear seat. And so we did 1v1, and then we would split, and we were going off to Valley to do the simulator. So the first aircraft bronze, well, I think it's called, so I came back to Yeovilton. We were bronze 2 and went up north, and we came down, descended low level. And the trip which really sticks out is because when we were low level, we had this almighty bang. I mean, it's the loudest noise I've ever heard in an aircraft. And at that point, sort of, we had a master caution, and the aircraft ended up in surge effectively. So it was extraordinary. So from everything being fine, flying around at 250 feet, 420 knots, to this fairly major drama going on. And my first thought saying, crumbs, this is going to end up really not very well. And no one really fancies making an ejection for obvious reasons, hopefully. And I thought, this is where it's going to end here. This is going to end in ejection. So the pilot at the front was, an incredible guy, got the aircraft away from the ground, but the aircraft was still in surge. So both of us effectively worked together, and with some prompts from the back as a two-crew type thing, saying, look, mate, we need to close and shut down the engine for immediate relight. So close the engine down, shut it down, so it's now a glider. So it's only a single-engine aircraft here at all. So now you got a whole heap of problems. And then relit it, and luckily enough, the engine came back, so I was blessed that the engine was robust enough to cope with it. And it was Friday afternoon, and there's always a bit of banter about military bases closing at lunchtime, but they do close, as you probably know. And it's the only time I've ever put out a Mayday. And so the Mayday, excuse me, was put out. And Lambeda, which is on the sort of west coast of Wales, sort of picked it up, and we said we need to divert, and we diverted into Lambeda. I mean, the aircraft was trashed. I mean, the engine was a write-off, as we found out later. This wasn't a Cat 5. So that wasn't repairable. The airframe was repaired. So that was a memorable day in the Hawk. What was interesting also about that is because of the Mayday, other military units listened to it. And within about 5 minutes of landing at Lambeda, we thought, what are we going to do now? We're completely in the wrong place, no way to get back to Yeovilton. And this helicopter, this RAF helicopter, landed and said, do you want to lift anywhere? And we said, well, yes, please, and took us up to Valley. So we went up to Valley, which was a result, because Valley was where we wanted to go anyway, and I wanted to do the simulator. But Yeovilton operations had already found out we sort of diverted, and they cancelled the sim. But I walked into the simulator building and said, can I reinstate it, because I'm here for a reason anyway. And the bloke said, are you the people who had sort of the engine, the bird strike and the engine failure? I said, yeah. He said, well, you won't need to do a relay, will you? So I said, no. Didn't need to. And then, interesting, we were still at Valley, and so we thought, well, we still need to get back to Yeovilton, because that's obviously where we live and where we cars are and everything else. And the jet stream was en route from Prestwick down to Yeovilton, and managed to drop into Valley and picked us up. So about 2:30, 3 o'clock, we're all back at Yeovilton, minus an aircraft, which was an interesting day in the Hawk, I have to say.
Amazing. Best Uber rides ever.
What's that?
Best Uber rides ever.
Yeah, exactly. And we didn't have to pay for it, so that was good, wasn't it? So that was a memorable day in the Hawk for sure.
Yeah, so before we move on, how many hours did you get on the Hawk in total?
I think, in fact, the Hawk I flew for the longest in terms of time. So I think I flew about 7 years in the Hawk. So about 4 years is something like that when I was in the service, and then another 3 years when I was in the reserve. So not many hours, not like you do in an airline. But I think it's around sort of 700-800, something like that, in terms of the Hawk. So it was quite a lot for me anyway. Yeah.